All right, so week 3 is fire. So externally, when we think of the energetics of fire, we look at the sun, because the sun is involved in so many transformative processes.
So, week 3 is fire.
Hang on,
Muted.
let
So,
me
externally,
Unmuted.
we think of the energy
let me
fire.
mute.
The sun.
All participants are muted, and they can unmute themselves.
All right, sun. We're back. So yeah, it's represented by the sun. It's like a big flaming ball in our solar system. And if you think about transformation and how many transformative processes happen from the sun on Earth, from the plants harnessing and photosynthesis, and then how much grows from that. So it's like that source of light. And the sun, it's represented in so many different cultures as well as that centerpiece, as the center of the solar system, where people gather around the fire. In the center of an alchemist lab, there's always the fire. So it is that transformative process. And internally, it's represented by a digestive fire. So in Ayurveda, they actually say there's like 4 Agnis, there's 4 types of fire. But essentially, again, the digestion breaks down and transforms our food and gets rid of the toxins and also absorbs the nutrients. So in our bodies, our fire is represented by a digestive fire and how we digest life. And really, we come into talking about transformation when we're looking at fire, because it's that one aspect that there's always that like heat, that intensity within transformation, and there's always that fine line between letting go of things to actually put into the fire, and then that fire roaring to get clearer vision. So it's almost like if we're calling in more vision, the fire needs to be fed. So sometimes stuff gets burnt up, right? But also we can call in vision by letting go of things, being like, I'm ready to see where I need to go and to really transform. And if we sit back and we go, cool, I'm ready to let go of this stuff and I'm going to give that to the fire, we're participating with the fire. So that's the sort of aspect that we want to play with the fire, is to remember that we need to feed the fire in our transformation. So we need to constantly be in a process of letting go of things we no longer need, and the fire will take that and illuminate our path even further, even brighter. And the energetics that I find around fire is really when we focus. So last week with air, we're looking at intention. So it's like connecting in with that field and setting an intention. But then with fire, what we're wanting to do is we're wanting to really find, where is our focus? What are we focusing on to create? So that's a big one. So it's like we listen to what wants to happen, then we find what our intention is, and then we focus on that. And in that focusing, we're also bringing in the visualization. What does it look like? And holding that vision. So when we look at the processes, we've got the art of transformation. So we're looking at purification and illumination. So fire is super interesting in that it's purifying. Like when we put things into the fire, it burns off anything that is no longer needed. So it actually can like shed layers off. You think of the phoenix being reborn out of the fire, like golden, right? And even metals, when metals are put into fire and then they're hammered afterwards and then they're put into water, each time that hammer hits the fire and there's those sparks, that's like shedding off all the stuff that's not needed for that strength of that sword. So yeah, that's part of the purification. So again, the purification side is like we can also participate here and be able to sit and write down things we're ready to let go of. It's a really powerful practice to just be like, what's no longer serving us? What's in our way? What are we willing to sacrifice to create our vision? So it's a really important part. Or what are we scared that we might lose if we get what we want? You know, that in itself is also part of that. So really when we do find that, it's interesting, because like for me, over the weekend I was at like Path of Alchemy, which is a workshop, like a 4-day workshop, and we're doing a lot of this sort of work. And a thing that kept coming up for me as far as creating the vision that I want is that I would lose my identity of like who I was, which is interesting because when I had the dream about cutting my hair and I started thinking about it, I was like, who would cut my hair? What would it look like? And I was like, oh, that's right, that's part of my identity. And I'd already highlighted that I was scared, or something that's useful to me might be lost if I got my vision. So I was straight away like, all right, I need to cut it off, because there is this mental attachment to something around my identity with the dread. So that plays as a part of my purification to feed the fire, to even increase the illumination even more. So that's like an example, I guess, because yeah, purification and illumination. So really allowing ourselves to be illuminated and for our path to be lit for us, you know, by letting go. So letting go is not only just going with the flow, but it's releasing and then really being able to focus and see what's really going on. And the other one is transmutation and the path. So a cool thing with the fire is like the transmutation, which is taking something that isn't of much value or that you don't really like, and being able to transmute it into something of worth and something that you really can use. So often I see it within fire is that any obstacles that come in your way, when you can really drop into the fire and be like, that's awesome that this has happened, because it allows me this opportunity to transmute this, because it's allowing you, it's giving you material to work in your favor. So whenever a situation that happens that might seem unfavorable, you always have the ability to transmute that, because it's a reminder. It's like, okay, cool, this happened, which means like, and then to really tap in and be like, so what is my vision? Like, what am I doing? So this happened for a reason, and what is my vision, so I can turn this situation into fuel for my fire? Because I mean, that's how I look at it. When things disappear out of my life, as much as it can hurt, you can also just like sit with it and be like, what is my vision again? How is this aiding my vision? How can I use this content? How can I use this material to feed the fire and move forward? So it's almost nice when you do get stuff happening in your life, and then you also know that you're in the transformation, and really it's boring otherwise. You know, if you don't feel a little bit uncomfortable in your situation, then you're probably stagnating, really. So it's about that, knowing that all this stuff is like awesome to transmute, and we need to like keep digging deeper to transmute stuff. It's part of the path, it's part of the process of why we're here. And even in a lot of the alchemical texts, they say that like man is here to perfect what nature hasn't. So some people think, oh, nature's perfect, or have like a thing around that, but you can see it where when we really are like the flowers of nature. So there's different layers. There's like the plants, there's the animals, then there's like the human consciousness. So our role here is to bring something new and to take what we have and transmute it into something higher as well, because we have that conscious thought and we can contemplate ourselves, that it really brings us, and that's part of our path, to see what we have and how we can actually transmute things. And you can think about it like a cacao pod with cacao beans in it, and then if you actually take it and ferment it and dry it and roast it and grind it and then melt it and then temper it, and you got a chocolate bar. You know, there's a big difference between like a cacao bean and a chocolate bar, right? It's a similar thing. You can look at coffee, beer, you can look at like a guitar from a tree, you know, to actually being made into a guitar or a flute. It's like man does that, so we're in this transmutation. So nature provides us with the raw material to perfect it into what our focus is, essentially. And then it is an even greater expression of nature. So yeah, that's the transmutation. And fire, I just want to share, like, fire is one of those ones, like transformation, where it's sort of like ether, where you can really get caught up in it and almost addicted. So ether is very much like tapping into those infinite possibilities and constantly being there. And when you come into fire, you know, like letting go and transforming and visioning and dreaming, and like I very much get into the fire as well. But it's nice for these next 7 days to really get into it, so that when we move into water, you can move. I find that water is always the most challenging for everyone, no matter what like star sign you are. Like I have heaps of water in my star sign, but the energies through the elements on the bigger scale of creation are a bit different. But to really immerse yourself in the fire this week will really help in being ready to move into the water. And yeah, the fire is a great one. And yeah, just wanted to share that, because often people get really excited about fire. For me, the best thing about fire is remembering the fire, because when you find yourself in a situation where things are being taken away from you, or perceived like they're being taken away from you, to remember that you're probably in fire. So it is time to really look at letting things go and focusing on your vision even more so. And then you'll move out into water. So it's a beautiful process to be in. And yeah, it's a powerful one. It's that middle ground of all the elements, where the fire allows for, you know, it's this medium between the really like etheric, really subtle ether and air, just before coming into the more structures of water and earth. So fire is this like in between spirit, you know, that guards those realms. So yeah, it's a really good one. And the second one there is it's fueled by focus. So the more we focus on something, the brighter the fire burns, and the more we'll get the fire started. So when you even think of like a magnifying glass starts fire, right? When it's really got its focal point aligned and that light shining, that's when you'll get a fire. So again, it's about that intention. So the air really feeds it. From breathing, setting your intentions, visualizing, it's when you can be clear with your intention, it allows you to focus more and start to see it. The other one is igniting your passion. So this one's really good for the fire, because sometimes we can get a little bit lost in needing to do stuff or do things, and sometimes we just need to like let it all go, right? And just go fuck it, and just like lay on your back and be like done with it all. And then like once you do that and you give it all to the fire, slowly or quickly your passion will arise and start burning and be like, no, but I want to fucking do this, right? And that's what we want to be at when we're in fire as well, as just being guided by our inner passion, because that is what will really light our path along here. So focus and passion. And the other one is like the drishti. So in yoga they talk about the drishti, which is like your focal point. So in yoga, like when you're doing a balancing pose or something like that, a yoga, they'll say find your drishti point, which essentially is your like focal point. So if you're standing in like tree pose, and they'll tell you like stare at a dot on the wall. And what it allows you to do is to be focusing your gaze on something while you can hold your body in a certain position. So again, when we're becoming like the conduit for like spirit to flow through us from what wants to happen to what our intention is, then we're focusing on one spot to really hold our balance. It's important. And again, also with our drishti, we can also, like in meditation, just to focus in on our, like in our third eye. That's a beautiful space to like look for vision, or just play with visualizing certain things. So that's a little yogi terminology, but yeah, it's a really powerful practice when you start to focus on certain things while you're trying to balance. So again, within like a business setting, it's like if you're doing a whole lot of stuff, like, and you've got a lot of different work to do and a lot of things, and it can seem overwhelming, just really like let it all go. What's your passion? What's your focus? Write it somewhere, and then have it as your focal point. So as your drishti, so you can look at it and be like, that's why I'm doing all this stuff. Awesome. Because you might be doing something that you think you need to do, but if you can just always come back to just being like, fuck it. I'm sorry that I'm swearing a lot, but yeah, it feels good. It's sort of fiery. But yeah, you can just like drop it all and be like, I'm done with it all. Like, I'm not going to die if I don't do that stuff, and at least have your focal point, at least building up. So we will look into like vision boarding and actually creating a vision board or a Pinterest board for this, just so you have somewhere to look at, and then it sparks the vision in the mind, especially in those times where we can just stop, because we can't just always be going. We need to have these times of just like letting it all go, right? Like giving it all to the fire, letting it grow. So that's that focal point. So we will create something this week where it can also be like our focal point. So creating that vision. And I mean, we'll go into it when we talk about the practices, but with a vision board, you can use it from magazines, you can get images from Pinterest, you can create like a vision board on Pinterest, which is cool. Or you can paint it, or you can draw it, but it all depends like what's going to inspire most for you. But it is important that it is a visual thing you can look at. Just sort of saying that. So then there's another saying that to eat is, it's like what is it? To eat is a gift, but to digest is divine. So when we're looking at digestion, again, we're looking at the internal and external of it. So how we digest food and how we digest in our body is also a representation of how we're digesting life. So you often find people with digestive disorders also have trouble digesting life, because we hold a lot in our guts, and a lot of people hold a lot of tension in their stomach. So it is or tension or stress. I was speaking with my friend. I call him a Spartan. He's like an epic personal trainer dude. Him and his partner are like Spartans. And he was saying how with a lot of his clients that they'd always have like this belly weight that they couldn't get rid of. And what he started doing was incorporating 5 minutes of meditation after their session, and then it started cutting their weight. It's because all his clients are like high-end businessmen who hold a lot of stress, and it all goes into their belly. So no matter how much they're working out or running or doing anything, they have all this stress. and it sits in their belly. So again, with that, it just shows the power of meditation and that simple sitting and breathing, which is also the ether practice, the air practice of really allowing the stress to move through and just being and allowing things to move, and for the density of the emotions to break up a bit and dissipate. So again, it comes down to our digestion. So it's important to really feed our digestive fire, so to really activate it. And a good way of doing that is probiotics is one, and also with lemon water. So having lemon water first thing in the morning, warm. You don't want to have cold water. It really helps to spark that digestive fire and get the liver going and get all those organs ready to just be like this cauldron for the food to come into and the magic to happen within the gut. So all the things you can do to assist the digestive fire is always good. And if any of you guys do need any help with that, I'm happy to have a chat. There's a fair few different herbs you can have as well. And this one's really fun. The microbiome. Microbial alchemy is what I call this. And this is in relation to like the bacteria that's in our gut. So everyone knows you have probiotics in yogurt or whatever, and it gives you probiotics in your gut. And this is sort of well known, but then also when you look at your gut, people are now finding out that the majority of our serotonin is produced in our gut. So it's produced by the bacteria in our gut. So the bacteria in our gut is what makes us happy. It's really interesting. But if you take it to the next step, and like within the health industry at the moment, the most researched topic is the microbiome, which is the fact that our body is 90% microbiome and 10% human DNA, which means that 90% of this like fleshy body that we are is actually microbiotica. So not only is there bacteria in our gut that's breaking down our food and working with our immune system and our digestion and everything, it like plays with everything. But not only is it producing our serotonin, but then there's bacteria that then takes that serotonin and travels with it up our bloodstream to our brain, where it gives it to another bacteria, which then works it in our brain. So it's really interesting, because when we're essentially in our essence, we're a soul. So like Kyle is the soul of Kyle, and then I'm in this body, but I'm not actually of this body. So when Kyle feels like eating chocolate, it's not actually Kyle who feels like eating chocolate. It's the bacteria that makes you want to eat chocolate. So it's an interesting one, because if that's what's creating our emotions, that's what's also supporting the way we think and the way we create and how we are. So to really nourish the bacteria in our gut is the first step. It's also really cool because with things like our intention and listening, it's like if we listen to our body, it's not like you're just listening to this like machine thing that is our body. You're actually listening to like a microbiome. So it's like a whole living organism of multiple biotica that are working in synergy to function, you know. And again, if you do take it all the way back beyond bacteria, it is just still consciousness, so source consciousness, which we all come from. But essentially it breaks it down into we can communicate. So when you think of like indigenous people, when they get to a new land and they say hello to the land, they state their intention, it's because they're communicating with their bacteria, and as well as the bacteria that created the plants and created the soil and created everything. So it's not just them talking to spirit or consciousness. There is also a living organism in everything, because bacteria is everywhere. as well as saying, like, when you leave a place, saying goodbye, saying you'll be back, stating your intention, thanking it, it allows you to feel more comfortable. So the bacteria actually, what they found is the bacteria actually communicates via infrared. So, and I think it's up to like 10 meters. Ooh, don't quote me on that. But if you think about when you walk into a room sometimes and you feel really uncomfortable, it's because your bacteria is not comfortable with the other bacteria or might feel threatened by it. So when you actually walk into a room and you actually like take time to like scan the room, feel into it, breathe, be present, connecting with your intention, why are you there, what's your intention there, not only will you be communicating with your bacteria and then emanating that out to the other people's bacteria, but you're also just allowing yourself to come into a space. So that's just like a taste of bacteria, because the microbiome is like super fascinating. I find it's like, it's a really cool part of science. I really like it and feel like in the future it'll be like you'll get some sort of illness and you'll just go to some sort of dispensary and they'll give you different strains of bacteria for different things. You'll be like, this one will go straight to your lungs, will be supporting that, and this one, and the mushrooms sort of do that. Medicinal mushrooms do sort of reprogram the immune system. But at the same time, if you don't have the optimal bacteria in your gut, the whole system is in disorder or disease. So that's where good probiotics come in as well. And again, if you guys do want some probiotics, I can help you out. But it's fascinating. And they actually found that the bacteria in your gut doesn't actually change. You never get more microbiotica in your gut. It's just how strong that colony is. So people will say candida, where there's an overgrowth of a bacteria that's not friendly to the rest of the body. It's because the bacteria you're born with isn't thriving. So when you're having probiotics, it's actually going straight through your system, but it's feeding that original colony, which is really cool. I even go as far as to see like people who eat lots of like wheat and lots of sugar and these things. It's like there's a certain bacteria that is taking over the human race. So if you want to look at light and dark, it's like there's a certain one, and it tends to eat lots of wheat, lots of milk, lots of sugar. And then you look at on the other side with companies like GMO companies and Monsanto and stuff, which are really targeting the wheat and the corn, and they're doing sugar beets and all these things that we're all finding out are really toxic and cancer causing. So this little paradigm, just sort of sit with me on this. It's like, what if like the Illuminati and like the illuminated ones, what if they are actually creating all these things that are targeting this bacteria, which are overfeeding on the wheat and the gluten and those things, to actually kill that off? I don't know. I just like to put spanners in the works sometimes just to make people think. But you never know, because people say like the Illuminati are bad, but what if they are just the illuminated ones that are holding information because we're not ready for it? And what if the whole battle of dark and light is actually just the bacterial overgrowth, and it's actually which one are we supporting? And would we really be conscious about other plants and superfoods if there weren't so much health things going on with the wheat and the gluten? And it might just be a process of reconnecting in with the good bacteria. And I mean, you can really tell with your way of communicating and receiving and digesting life by the health of your gut. So yeah, that's a little microbiome knowledge for you guys in there. So moving into the fire practices. So the first one is creating your vision. So crafting a vision board and writing your vision. So yeah, get some magazines. Like I said, you can do a Pinterest. If you don't know what Pinterest is pretty epic. You'll probably get distracted by all the other cool pictures within it. But you can get it and you can just pin stuff to it. So when you click your vision board, it pops up with all these images, and then at least when you're looking through it, you're like, oh yeah, you know, I got like a mysticism one with like all different cool things. And the other one is writing your vision. So you can like write it, but like give it a written context and then also give it a visual context. It just helps again with that drishti and that focus, where you can put it somewhere and see what it is you're creating. The other one is supporting your digestion with lemon and warm water in the morning on rising. Sorry, a lot of that writing is like in the fire and you can't see it. I only just noticed that then on that handout. So yeah, having some lemon water, warm water in the morning, and just see how you go. You know, just try that. Try it every morning. Half a lemon and some warm water in the morning, or like 15 minutes before you eat. Just waking the body up and really supporting that digestive fire. And the fire ritual. So this is pretty fun. So for those, like it's good throughout the whole program to be continuing to do the meditation and those journaling. You'll just find that, especially when you find things aren't moving and things feel like they're stagnating, like just go back to what your intention is. So even just like go back to your intention and then also go back to meditating. So clearing and opening that connection to the ether and to that field of pure potentiality, and journaling, the gratitude journaling, will just really keep you back present and connected. So with this one, with the fire ritual, when we're doing the journaling and when we're doing the meditation, I would like you to get a candle, and every time you start your meditation, light the candle. Connect in with the fire, meditate. I mean, you can candle gaze if you want, but it's the act of, like, you know, ceremonies began. So light it, meditate. Same with if you want to take the candle and then sit with the candle and journal. It's just adding another level where the fire is there. So in a way, the fire can lay witness. So within the meditation, anything that comes up, the fire is also like sucking in all that negative energy, moving it through, and also illuminating. And when you're writing, the fire is paying attention as well to what are your thoughts, what are your visions, what are you dreaming up, what are you letting go of. So just forming that relationship with the candle, forming that relationship with the fire. So that's a really powerful practice. And again, if you think of like with the spell books and with the witches, there's always a candle, like in an alchemist lab or wherever. There's always a candle. There's always that aspect of fire. So yeah, bring that in. Bring in some candles, and it's also quite romantic. So then the other fire ritual, with that candle that sits with you in this journaling and meditation, you form that relationship. We also want to be writing down our intentions as well. So we learnt like the art of spells in last week. So we can write a list of spells that we're releasing. So I'm now free of, I'm now letting go. And then also write a list of things that we're calling in. So within this, what I find is you can do this as many times as you want, the fire ritual. And I highly recommend doing it like every night if you want. And it's pretty fun. Just get like a terracotta pot, write your intentions. So I now let go, I now receive, or I'm now calling in, or I now am. And then give it to the fire. Whatever order you want to do it, it's great. Sometimes letting go is good, and then calling in the vision. And just pop it in the terracotta pot while it burns, and then just connect it to the fire while it's burning. And what I find with this as well is it's refining and it's purifying. So, you know, the first day you might write a page, 2 pages, 3 pages of things you're releasing. Just keep writing. Like, I'm now getting rid of all this stuff, and I'm calling in all this stuff, and then burn it. And then the next day do the same thing. And then the next day do the same thing. And what you'll find is the ones they'll start to highlight the ones that really are important and almost break it down to a point where you're just almost just saying one word that sums up that entire paragraph of what you're letting go. So the more you do it, the more it purifies, and you know and you see the vision just by the words. You get that association right, and then you're pretty much just burning a list of words, but there's so much more meaning into it. So it's sort of a bit more like cryptid coded opposed to a whole journal. But you can go through that process because each time you have all that stuff, you're burning it away, you're purifying it, you're transmuting it into something that's easier to work with. Cool. Yeah, so that's the practices and the topics. So I will unmute you guys and stop the recording now.